Greetings all, and welcome to Daily Pali Reading. Today's reading begins a series from the Aniccasuttaṃ, the Sutta on Impermanence, found in the Khandha section, that is the section on the khandhas, the five aggregates which make up the mind-body complex, the nama rupaṃ, found in the Samyutta Nikāya, Savati Niddhanaṃ. Now, we've come across this before. This is an abbreviation, really, of something along the lines of Ekang Samayang Bhagava Savatiyang Viharati Jetavane Anatta Pindikasa Arame. We would know that if we read backwards or read towards the beginning of this section, the Khandha section here. Niddhanaṃ means originating in, happening in. So this compound is a tapurisa, meaning happening at savati. Savatiyang would be the locative. But in the compound, we just get savati. We don't really know the case. We have to understand how the case would relate to the other part of the compound. Now, the remainder of this sutta takes on almost the quality, if not of a magic spell, of a mantra. It's a teaching, and it's highly repetitive, which is not uncommon. It's not an uncommon feature of the Pali suttas. In this case, it makes a lot of sense because we're going through these five khandhas. And we begin with rupaṃ. Rupaṃ here, that's our first word. Rupaṃ, neuter nominative singular, means the body. Now, it could also mean matter more generally. But in this case, since we find it in the section on the khandhas, the five aggregates, we know it means the body. By the way, I have to give a shout out to ancient Buddhist texts. I'll leave a link in the description. I came across this particular reading there. That site has gathered up many, many great readings from the Pali Canon in one place. So I would highly recommend people go check out that site. So we have rupaṃ. Then we have bhikkhave, vocative plural, O monks. And I should say, we see this in quotes here. The Buddha it's not explicitly said, but we can understand whenever we see bhikkhave, it's the Buddha is speaking. He's addressing his monks. And he's telling them, rupaṃ, the body, and then we have to understand some form of the verb to be. This is an equational or nominal sentence. Aniccasuttaṃ. Aniccasuttaṃ is impermanent. And this is indicating the opposite of the alpha privative in Greek, and just like in our English word, which comes from the Latin, not permanent, impermanent, aniccaṃ. Niccaṃ being permanent or always. Yad aniccaṃ taṃ dukkhaṃ. So now we have this structure that's going to repeat here a couple of times. Yad is the relative pronoun. This is nominative. It's neuter, nominative, singular. Taṃ is the demonstrative pronoun, neuter, nominative, singular. Now, literally, we could kind of see this as which is impermanent, that is dukkha. And we're going to talk about dukkha in just a minute, so we won't translate it right now. But I think in English, the best way to handle this would be to take the tongue, yad, together. That which is impermanent is dukkha. Again, a nominal sentence, we have to understand a form of the verb to be. So, aniccaṃ, as we said, nominative, singular, neuter. Dukkhaṃ, this could be an adjective, but I believe it's simply a neuter noun. Dukkha has been, I think unfortunately, many people would say unfortunately, been translated as suffering. And the reason that's a little unfortunate is it's not because it doesn't include suffering, but it's not limited to suffering. It's really not easy to capture dukkha with one word in English, or even with a couple of words. One word I like is ill at ease. To me, that captures dukkha pretty well. You'll hear unsatisfactory. And also, I think as of late, or pretty recently, you'll hear this idea of a wobbly wheel. And the idea here is that the ka is a hole, and specifically where an axle would go on a wheel. And the du part means that it's not placed in the center. And if you don't get an axle on the center of a wheel, it's going to be wobbly. It's not going to offer a smooth ride. Incidentally, the opposite of dukkha is sukha. And that is a little easier to get in a single word in English. We could say happiness. That would more or less capture the meaning there. So something that comes up a lot in Pali here are these du and su prefixes. Du meaning bad, su meaning good. Su probably being related to the EU or the epsilon, ypsilon in Greek. We find that in words like euthanasia, euphemism. So the Buddha is telling us here, the body's impermanent. That which is impermanent is dukkha. It's ill at ease. It's a wobbly wheel. We know that even if we're healthy at this minute in time, at this specific moment in time, we could become ill. Lots of things can happen to the body. And if we get ill, we don't know how severe it might be at times. So this is sort of what dukkha is. And I believe I've read in Thai where they will mention that dukkha is both mental and physical. It's being ill at ease mentally as well as physically. It's not just one or the other. Now we continue in this format or this structure, yang dukkhang tad anatta. That which is ill at ease, that which is dukkha, is anatta, not the self. Now we're going to put the brakes on right here for a minute, because the way a lot of Buddhists understand this is that which is dukkha is no self. There's sort of been this doctrine developed of no self in Buddhism. I would say that when we read this, and I'm not saying that it can't mean that, this is multidimensional, let's put it that way. But I think at the risk of being syncretic, you could read this as that which is ill at ease is not the Atman, that technical term from Vedanta. That which is ill at ease is not the true self, is not Brahman, is not Nibbana, is not the Buddha nature, if we want to import some other words and ideas. And I think this is an important distinction. It may seem minor, but I believe what the Buddha is getting at is he wants to call attention to the fact that let's put it like this. He's not saying there's no self. He's saying that the body is not the self. As a matter of fact, he'll go through and say every aspect of the mind-body complex is not the self. That doesn't mean there's not a self. That self, I think we could identify with Nibbana. As a matter of fact, I think it is identifiable with Nibbana, but it is not what we typically consider to be a self, our self. That is a very important distinction, and that is what happens next.